This is Read the Tape, where we cut through the noise, the hype, the headlines to figure out what's really going on. I'm Mike Shapiro, real estate entrepreneur, mentor, and guy who's been through enough cycles to know the tape never lies. Here we talk about business, life, relationships, leadership, and how to stay clear where the world feels upside down. Because success isn't luck, it's pattern recognition. And if you can learn to read the tape, you can play the game smarter, sharper, and stronger. Let's get into it. This show is about rebuilding interpersonal skills in a digital world. None of you know how to have interpersonal skills. Of course, if you're my age, you probably do, because you didn't have any of these digital tools early on. You had none of the things that are eliminating your ability to have interpersonal skills. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to people where they're like, they don't know how to matriculate in person. They're using all of these digital tools, and it's getting worse. In fact, one day, I'm assuming that AI is actually going to be speaking for you, and we don't have to do anything. Is that the case? So you need to learn how to do this, because last time I checked, human beings were physical creatures. Last time I checked, we all had to interact with one another. Last time I checked, you were all getting in your cars and doing things, whether you're working out, whether you're showing up to a job, whether you're going on a date, whatever you're doing, it's physical in nature. It is actually, these skills are imperative. What are you going to do? Text while you're on a date? What are you going to do? Text the person who's supervising you, your boss? What are you going to do? DM somebody that you're having a meeting in a conference room? Forget it. You need to learn these skills. So this show is about learning those skills, what to do, what's happening, and why. This is imperative that you learn these skills. It's imperative that you understand these skills for you to really become the person that you probably want to be, or make the sale that you probably want to make, or become the leader that you probably want to be, or get the date. Mastering these skills will make you better at everything that you do, will get you the position that you want, will get you to the place that you really want to be. And the only way I can describe that is the people that are leading this revolution of the digital way, AI revolution, the social media revolution, all of these people, interestingly enough, were pretty awkward, in my opinion, socially. But if you notice closely, as they move on in their careers and as they practice, they're getting pretty good at this. Why is that? Because they're not digitally communicating when they're talking to an audience. They're not digitally communicating if they're talking to Congress or Senate in order to get what they want. They are talking in person. Their interpersonal skills are increasing by the minute. Almost all of these leaders in this world that we are now participating in have become better at these skills. If you don't think so, check what I'm saying. You go look at tapes from 10 years ago to today. You can see the differences. You can see the capability. I want to bring this into three parts as far as interpersonal skills, the way I like to look at it. There are three parts. There's verbal, there's visual, and there's physical. So let's talk about the verbal, all right? Verbal is obvious. Your verbal skills, your interpersonal verbal skills. You just have to practice that. We all know other people that are awkward is their verbal communications. They're not consistent. They don't know what to say. They're shy. Verbalizations, your capability and your articulation is really important for you to understand how to do that. And how are you going to do that? How are you going to learn how to do that? You're only going to learn how to do that by speaking and putting yourself into incredibly awkward situations. Say to yourself, if you're not good at verbal communications, and some of you are and some of you are not, and think about the most awkward situation you can do or be in as far as verbal communications is concerned, and put yourself in that situation. I have coached many people, and I tell them, what is awkward? What do you not like? Sometimes people are like, it's awkward for me to talk to a stranger. I say, go eat at a bar, in a nice restaurant, and force yourself to talk to the person next to you. Go talk to people on the street. Learn how to do that. Fear is your worst enemy. There's nothing to fear. What's the worst thing that happens when you're practicing interpersonal verbal communications? What is the worst thing that happens? Right? Nothing. They reject you. They laugh. Actually, if they laugh, for me, that'd be great, because then I'd get all excited. Whatever they do, it doesn't matter. You're not going to hurt anybody, I hope. It depends on what your verbal communications are. So be careful of that. However, you can learn that if you're awkward in your approach to verbalizations, you can learn that, hey, this isn't coming off the way I want to speak. I always say what's so interesting to me, one of the most efficient forms of communication is texting or DMing, as people do all the time, but it's actually the most inarticulate way to speak. How many times have you texted someone and they're reading it as something that's negative, or they're reading it as antagonistic, or they're reading it as abrasive? How many times does that happen? Why is that? Because when you're verbally speaking with someone in person, you're watching them, you're seeing their physicality, you're seeing their relationship, you're seeing if they say something back to you. Are they listening? Are they looking at you? What are they doing? So that's why verbal communication is so much more effective than texting or DMing or using things where you can't really communicate correctly. Which brings us to visual. Visual interpersonal skills are, people forget, because this is another part of the lost art of the visual. Why is it lost? Because I'm on a curated podcast. I have lighting, I have cameras, I have people who are editing me, I have people who are saying, hey, Mike, you've got a pimple, which I do right now. Hopefully you don't see it. There are people looking at what I'm doing. They're saying things, they're communicating to me to change it. It is edited, it is curated. It is not what happens when I'm in person, when I'm speaking to an audience, when I go into a room, when I'm meeting with somebody. It's not what happens. So the visual is what you're wearing. How do you look? Are you groomed? The visual is instant. People make judgments instantaneously. Obviously, I'm in the real estate business, as you all know. There are studies that are done that people make a decision on what house they're going to buy within seconds of them walking in the front hall. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Seconds. They didn't even see the house yet. Why is that? It's visual. There's other parts of this. There's the physical, but it's visual. Their eyes are telling them something. So if you master the art of visual interpersonal skills, you have to ask questions. You have to ask people, what do I look like? What is it? What is the visual interpretation? And you can't just ask one person. You have to ask multiple people, what does that look like? Because you're not curating it. On your phone, every day there are new tools to curate or to change the visual aspects of what you look like, what your body looks like, what your face looks like. You can change everything, even through AI, but you can't do that when you're in person. So study what you look like. Look in the mirror. Have people take pictures of you. See what reactions are. Practice that. Practice your visual interpersonal skills by changing what you're wearing. See how people react to that. Change it up. Change your haircut up. Change what you are looking like on a daily basis to see, is it better or worse? And also, I don't want to make light of this, but it's also about reading the room or reading the tape, as this book and this podcast is about. So visually, are you appropriately dressed for the occasion? Are you not appropriately looking the part? So that's important as well. And physical. What is the physicality? Physical is, how are you gesturing? What is your presence? It's almost, from an interpretive point of view, the physical nature of your interpersonal skills is, what does your body say? I have so many examples of the entering of a room, entering on a stage, entering to meet someone. That physical nature, all of these are working in tandem right now. Your verbal, your visual, your physical nature. So if I walk in a room and I want to present myself a certain way, what am I wearing? What am I saying when I first say something? What's my physical nature? Am I overpowering the room? Don't want everyone to notice me? Don't want people not to notice me? These are all important things. I remember, I'll bring up an example, that there was a personal trainer that wasn't getting any business, and obviously I work out a lot. I don't know if it's working, but I work out a lot. And so there was a personal trainer who couldn't get any business. And he suddenly said to me, hey, why don't I get any business? And I literally told him his physical nature was not working. He would walk into the room like downtrodden, sort of closed up, rather than walking in effectively saying, hey, I've worked really hard on my body. Do you want to look like me? How can I train you or help you be that person? This is a classic example of physical nature. Physical nature is really probably the most difficult thing to deal with because it really is in tandem with the other aspects of it, because your visual and your verbal communications will change the way people perceive your physical nature. I love to have people ask me questions, and people do all the time on social media, or they do in LinkedIn, or they call me, or they text me, and they use every available tool that is not interpersonal skill related. It is actually what we're talking about. Here's a great question, which I think is probably in everyone's mind right now. I hope, if anybody's watching this podcast and listening to it. Do you think social media actually caused people to lose these skills, or did it just expose who we already were? Great question. I think both. It actually has the ability to stop you from learning these skills, because why do you need to learn these skills when you're communicating on platforms that you can curate? So everything can be edited. So I'm on a podcast right now, my own podcast, and it is edited. So I get to look at what I said and what I did, and I get to edit it, and I help people help me with that. So what I put forth is edited. That doesn't happen when you're in person. So are we losing those skills? Well, sure, because we can edit everything. We can change everything. We can change the perception. So yeah, we're losing those skills, but how do you get them back? Well, you better get them back, because unless you're going to be hiding out in your house or hiding in your car, or you're just not even, you're going to be mute, just using your phone for everything, you better get them back. So yeah, that's a real problem. I think that's going to get worse and worse. And the irony is we are always physical creatures and always will be physical creatures, so we need to learn how to do that. Another great question is ghosting. People ask all the time, I'm getting ghosted. Did that happen before? Yes, there's nothing new about ghosting. Ghosting has been around since the dawn of communications. You just didn't do it the same way. You either said, I'll get back to you. You avoided them. How many times have you avoided somebody when you get in a room, like, oh, I don't want to see them or whatever? It's the same thing. Ghosting is just different. It's just easier to ghost on a digital device. There's nothing new about this, okay? It's just that we've changed the tools necessary to ghost. So am I going to tell you not to ghost people? Of course not, because I do that myself. It's a really effective tool when you don't want to deal with something, when you put your head in the sand. I want to talk about cancel culture, because this is part of the 3 aspects of interpersonal skills, because this has become sort of the de rigueur of our daily existence. We're canceling everything. You're swiping away. You're deleting. You're not answering. You're blocking. All of these digital tools have all sorts of abilities on a daily basis. There's all sorts of new filters. I don't need to deal with this. I can cancel this away. I can change the perception by canceling. Cancel culture is a very much part of our world. However, it's just different today, okay? There was always cancel culture. We just had to use our interpersonal skills in order to cancel. Cancel by what? Didn't answer the phone back in the day. Didn't want to see somebody, you didn't come out of your house. Didn't want to see somebody in the supermarket, you saw them in the corner, you moved the other way. There's nothing different about it. However, those skill sets are lost. You need to get those skill sets back, because when you're interpersonally relating to somebody with the 3 things that I described, you need to learn how to do that, because sometimes you do need to figure out a way to avoid a situation. If you're at a meeting and there's somebody that is abrasive and you don't want to come off abrasive to the other person, how do you figure out how to avoid that situation or diffuse that situation? You need to learn those interpersonal skills. You need to learn how to create a situation where you're not affected by it. You don't need to use a tool like swiping away or canceling. It's unbelievable what's happened today. The changes are dramatic because efficiency. Efficiency is the reason that all of these tools have come about. This is something that we can talk about at great length. Why do all these things come about? What has created these tools? What has created these communications tools? What's created the AI revolution? Efficiency. How do I get something done faster? How do I communicate faster? How do I get the job done faster? How do I become more productive? That's why these tools came about. But human beings are physical entities that we need to learn how to not be that way. We need to learn how to be warm, inviting, engaged, how to communicate. So this cancel culture, yes, has always been there. Learn how to cancel culture in an interpersonal way, in person, then versus all of these communication tools that are built to be efficient. Another question is, why do I feel so lonely lately? It's a great question. So would someone ask that without saying it in a digital way? Do you think that someone would come up to me, unless I was a professional therapist or a close friend maybe, and if I was a close friend, they probably wouldn't say that. Why do I feel so lonely? Because it's almost insulting. Has the digital world or the lack of interpersonal skills made people really lonely? Yes. It's viral. In fact, if you read the papers right now, there are actually potential laws going on in the books with the AI chatbots where people are actually having relationships with machines and they're telling them to do wrong things. And they're saying, hey, a young person's brain is not mature enough. We have to make laws against them using it to stop their loneliness. Are these interpersonal skills necessary to stop being lonely? Yes, they're imperative. Loneliness is being driven further along. It's not being helped by these digital devices. I think it's making it worse. In fact, I think it's making it worse because it's not real. Like I've talked about incessantly on this podcast, if you are watching and listening, hopefully you are. We are physical in our nature. We need to be physical in our ability to have relationships that make you not lonely, or ability to communicate verbally, physically, and also visually, so you're not lonely. You need to have these skills in order to not have true loneliness. It's quite a sad situation. It upsets me to see these tools that are amazing. I'm not blasting all of these digital tools, and there are many more to come, and many more efficiencies will occur. However, we can't get lost from the actual use of language to one another. We can't get lost with the actual use of visual aspects. We can't get lost in our physical aspects. So loneliness is an inherent problem worldwide. And how are you going to stop from being lonely? What are the skills, or what do you need to do? You have to say to yourself, I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to do things that create a sense of not being lonely. I'm going to do things that I fear. I'm going to start talking to people. I'm going to start going to events that I'm interested in. I'm going to take classes. I'm going to go to restaurants. I'm going to go on dates, whatever you need to do. I'm going to speak in front of audiences. I'm going to do things that put me into physical nature of other people so that I won't be lonely. And you will have to learn how to express those desires or decisions. You have to learn how to say, hey, I feel lonely. Because the one thing that we haven't lost, that we all share, it's inherent, is our humanity. And when you react to someone who says that question or that statement, I'm lonely, what is your reaction to that? What's your reaction to that? Hey, I want to help that person. Hey, I'm here. I want to help you. So when you learn how to communicate those interpersonal skills rather than in a digital way, you will learn how to have those interpersonal skills to stop being lonely. Being lonely, as easy as it is for me to say that, is a decision, is a choice that you make for yourself. If you don't want to be lonely, make that choice not to be lonely. Make that choice to do something about that. And there's countless ways of doing it. Countless. It's endless. But it all starts by putting down that phone, or stop chatbotting and going out into the world in whatever way you need to. A common thing I hear, sometimes it's a question, statements, or it's just a common thread. Hey, Mike, why are you so good at this? Or why are older people so good at this? Because I am older. Because I didn't have any of these tools. in order to accomplish the goals. I had none of these tools. I had to learn how to do all these interpersonal things in order to get what I wanted, in order to get a job, in order to get married, in order to have dates, in order to be good at sports. I had to learn all of these things without digital tools. I have to laugh. I have been married for 38 years, successfully married. So I think I'm somewhat of an expert in this. And I have to laugh because I want to bring back interpersonal skills from the perspective of when I met my wife, the first time I met my wife. And I ask her sometimes, and she laughs at me, and I say, "Hey, why did you like me?" And she said, "I liked you because of your shoes." Of course, that's hilarious to me because I think, you didn't like me because of my face? No, I liked you because of your shoes. This was a visual, physical, and also in nature in terms of what I did in order to get the date. All right? So all of these skills are lost. Try it. Try changing things around in order to get to the point of learning your physical, verbal, and visual skills. Try it. I want to wrap this show up because it's broad in its nature, and I'm not trying to indict the aspects of our communication that we use today, that I use, that I'm happy to use, that I think is important to the world. I want to wrap this up by talking about how to relearn these interpersonal skills in the physical world. Of course, use all these other tools. They're wonderful tools, and they've made our lives significantly better, but you need to relearn all these other aspects to your life to have interpersonal skills, because you're going to be a lot happier, a lot less lonely, and a lot more effective in your careers, in your social life, or whatever you're trying to accomplish, because that is imperative. As you know, you're not going to be staying in a dark room for your entire existence. Well, maybe some of you are. I hope not. However, you need to relearn all these. And the only way to do that is by practicing and doing. Okay? There's one way to learn how to have interpersonal skills, and that is to be interpersonal. That means to be with other people, to learn all these skill sets, to try on different clothes, to try on different colognes, to try on different deodorants, to enter a room in a different way, to change the cadence of your voice, how you speak or how you deliver. All of these skill sets are you can only use if you practice. We're all products of lifetimes of exposure. We're all products of the input that we've had and the output we've had. Yes, we're genetically predisposed a certain way. Clearly, that's how you have different personalities. However, we're exposed by what has happened in our life. And so if the things that have happened in your life have been negative and it's stopping you from having those interpersonal skills, well, try to get over that. Try to change that. This is all part of reading the tape. You need to read the tape of yourself. You need to understand how to read your own interpersonal capability in order to change that or get better at it or continue it. God, it would be wonderful if I could say that somebody is perfect. Of course, I am perfect, right? In interpersonal skills. It's absurd. I have to learn every single day how to change with the times, how to change my visual appearance, how to change my verbalizations if it's not working, and how to change the physical nature of what I'm doing. So what do? You practice. You get out there and practice. Part of interpersonal skills is that the existing technology that we use has accelerated our delivery. It was a famous artist, Andy Warhol, and said everyone's going to have 15 minutes of fame. I guess he was pretty accurate, except now it's 15 seconds of fame. Everyone is accelerating everything. And it's getting faster and faster and faster through TikTok, Instagram. Fast, 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 fast. Interpersonally, can it be fast? Can I make a 15-second conversation interpersonally and at work? No. These changes have occurred because of this technology. And of course they work and they keep your attention, but it's changed your perception of what you should do. It's lost art of conversation. conversation, and all of these things are two-dimensional. You don't see the third dimension. You are looking at me in a two-dimensional way. If you met me in person, it's three-dimensional. Your perception of me, our interaction, our interpersonal capability changes dramatically. I saw this mostly firsthand during the COVID crisis when I had to do business on a Zoom call. And I got to be sort of a Zoom expert, if you will. And it was fascinating as I was in a startup at that point in time where we were all in person and then we were on Zoom and they were in person again. And the ability to communicate changed dramatically. So all of this acceleration that's occurred has now gotten to a point where most companies are saying, hey, enough is enough. I want you to come back to work because you're not being creative. Can you be creative in 15 seconds, or are you just getting someone's attention for 15 seconds? You need to relearn that. This is also in part to the emotional intolerance or intolerance of everything. So like if you don't like something or it's curated because they want your eyeballs, you're becoming intolerant of listening to other things. You're becoming intolerant of ability to communicate. You're becoming intolerant in order for you to sit down with some other person, listen to their point of view, potentially argue it, and potentially have an interpersonal relationship, have a personal relationship. So it's an unfortunate aspect of this acceleration. And you cannot accelerate as much as I would like to accelerate some of these conversations. This would be great in an interpersonal way. Like, hey, you got 15 seconds to tell me what you want to tell me. Do I want to say that sometimes? 100%. However, I'm not going to do that, even though that's kind of funny. Last question. I'm in my 20s. I feel awkward now, even though I used to be confident before the pandemic. Did video calls mess this up? 100% video calls mess this up. Video calls have become performative. You are performing for a video stream. You're all becoming actors. This is an interpersonal skill set. It's absurd. So this is why people have to go back to the office. So it's not performative. Yes, it's messed it up. What do you need to do? Change it up. Not do a video call. Meet somebody for lunch. Talk to them on the phone. Don't text them. Try that out. See how much more effective it is to use your interpersonal skills and communicate them with them verbally or in person. That is the answer. Otherwise, you're performing and you're one-dimensional or two-dimensional. It's like a television. I'm going to tell you a little story about my interpersonal failures or interpersonal communication failures. And what did I do to recover? What did I do to change the outcome? And how did I get those skill sets? Well, I got those skill sets because I didn't have any of these tools before. So I had sold my business and I was going to enter a different business in technology. And I had a meeting with two very senior people in the tech business from Seattle. And I did everything possible wrong. I did not read or situationally aware. I was not situationally aware. I did not read the tape. I didn't do any of the things I teach others to do. All right. I met with people from Seattle. I love to call it practice poverty. All they do is wear puffy coats and they look homeless, even though they may be very, very rich. And I hear from Newport Beach where everything is opposite. It's all visual. So I show up to the meeting late, mistake. I see them in their practice poverty. I was wearing something absurd from where I am in Southern California. And I went up and I was honest about what I had done, which was funny. And I had, instead of meeting, because they were late to the meeting, instead of going to the meeting right away when they were late, I went and passed the restaurant and I saw in the corner of my eye a pedicure place. And I'm like, oh, I'll work from the pedicure bowl. I ended up getting a pedicure and subsequently I fell asleep and I was late to the meeting. So I pull up. They're sitting on the patio. They see me pull up. I was in an absurd car. Remember, practice poverty from Seattle. They see me get out. I'm wearing the wrong clothes. They see me walk out. Every single thing, visual, physical, verbal, everything's wrong. I go up to them and I say, I'm sorry, I was late. And they're looking me up and down. And I say, I was late because I got a pedicure and I apologize. So they said, the term was, are you always like this? And I said, yes, I'm always like this. And I used my humor to recover. So eventually I recovered because I had all of these interpersonal skills that was given to me by practice, because I didn't have any of these tools to recover from a disaster. I did not read the room. I did not read the tape. I didn't do anything right. It was funny, actually. And the business was developed. We became good friends and everything worked out fine. However, it could have been a disaster unless I had those interpersonal skills and I was able to recover from using those skills. That's it for today's episode of Read the Tape. If you like what you heard, make sure you're following me everywhere people argue about ideas. I'm talking about everywhere. Instagram, Meta, TikTok, YouTube, all under Shapiro Method. And please be sure to download and like the podcast. I'm on LinkedIn as Mike S. Shapiro, where people post their resumes, and call it thought leadership. And of course, you can find this podcast on all platforms, including the ones that haven't even been invented yet. That's my line. I'm keeping it. I'm Mike Shapiro reminding you the tape never lies, but people usually do. See you next time.